First, though, we want to get right to our top story, and that is the death of Yasser Arafat. For nearly 40 years, he was the face of the Palestinian movement and an enemy of Israel, a master terrorist who later won a Nobel Peace Prize. Arafat will be buried in his West Bank headquarters. CBS News correspondent David Hawkins is live in Ramallah with more. David, good morning.
Good morning, Renee. Palestinians woke up today to the news that the only leader most of them have ever known died overnight in a French military hospital from a still undisclosed illness. To some, he was the father of the Palestinian cause. To others, he was the face of Palestinian terrorism. That face is being pasted up on walls all over the West Bank and Gaza today as his people begin to mourn his passing. Not only with sorrow, but with symbols of defiance. Young men set car tires on fire in the streets and fired weapons into the air. His unshaven face and headscarf became the most recognizable symbol of the Palestinians' often violent struggle for a homeland. Throughout the 1970s, Arafat and the PLO were synonymous with terrorism, conducting several sensational hijackings and murdering Israeli athletes at the 1972 Munich Olympics. But in 1974, when Arafat addressed the United Nations, he spoke of carrying a freedom fighter's gun in one hand and an olive branch in the other. When Israel invaded Lebanon in 1982, Arafat and the PLO were kicked out of Beirut, this time fleeing to Tunis. 5 years later, the first Palestinian uprising, the Intifada, erupted in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. But in the early 1990s, secret peace talks resulted in a historic agreement. In return for recognizing Israel's right to exist, Palestinians got limited self-rule. Arafat returned to Gaza triumphant, one step closer to his dream of an independent Palestinian state. But the peace process received deadly blows. Palestinian militants continued terrorist attacks against Israel, and an Israeli radical assassinated Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin. In response to Palestinian terrorism, Israel reoccupied Palestinian territory and gave up on Arafat as a peace partner and effectively locked him up in his demolished West Bank headquarters. Although he never achieved his dream of founding an independent Palestinian state, Yasser Arafat died as he lived, combining wily diplomacy and violence to the very end. After a ceremony in Paris today and a funeral in Cairo tomorrow, Arafat's body will be brought back here to Ramallah for burial. Bulldozers are at work clearing away debris from his gravesite. The place that was once his prison will become his shrine. Renee?
CBS's David Hawkins in Ramallah. David, thanks.
Yasser Arafat's death will obviously have a major impact on life in the Middle East. Fouad Ajami is a CBS News consultant and a Middle East expert. Good morning.
Good morning, Hannah. Thank you.
Mr. Arafat brought worldwide attention to his people's plight, but he did not bring them statehood. He did not bring them peace. What will his legacy be?
Well, I think that's a good question. That's the fundamental question about Yasser Arafat. I'm not even sure he really wanted statehood. This man harks back to the 50s and the 60s when he was shaped and formed. He thought of himself as this great revolutionary. And when statehood was offered to him, it was really offered to him on a gold platter in the summer of 2000 at Camp David. 14 days, Bill Clinton and Ehud Barak, diplomatic negotiations with Yasser Arafat. He was offered statehood, he turned it down and went back to the West Bank in Gaza and started an insurrection against Israel. Fundamentally, I think he was a man uncomfortable with order, uncomfortable with the institution. He was a gypsy, he was a vagabond. That really was his legacy. He thought of himself as this great revolutionary figure.
President Bush called for the Palestinians to replace him as their leader a couple of years ago. And the president said yesterday this was a significant moment in the Palestinians' history. And Israeli Prime Minister Sharon really echoed that, calling this an historic turning point in the Middle East. So what are we looking at now? A real diplomatic opening here, an opportunity?
Well, I think there is a kind of irony here, Hannah, because in fact President Bush may really get what he wished for. Because so long as Yasser Arafat was on the scene, the Bush diplomacy could be in abeyance. We could just simply say, look, we have put on the table a proposal for the Palestinians, and the Palestinians should renounce terror and change their leadership. Now that Arafat is gone, the pressure will be on President Bush to come forward with a decent proposal for the Palestinians. Today, President Bush will be visited by Prime Minister Blair, his stalwart ally in the war in Iraq, and Blair will be making the push for an Israeli-Palestinian peace process, for which I'm afraid President Bush may not even be ready. But so long as Yasser Arafat was there, he was a kind of solution. He was an odd kind of solution. Now we will face a moment of truth here.
The militant Islamic group Hamas has vowed that Arafat's death has strengthened their resolve to attack Israel. What are we going to see in the short term here? Are we going to see these moderate and radical factions vying for power? Are we going to see more violence?
Well, this is the heart of the problem. I mean, in fact, Arafat leaves a void behind. It's the void he wanted. He wanted no powerful contenders. Now, the Hamas people are in the wings. The Hamas people are in the street. There's a culture of violence that has taken root in the West Bank and Gaza. And Hamas will step into the breach because you will have a struggle of some kind between Hamas and Islamic Jihad, these terrorist organizations on the one hand, and some of the lieutenants of Yasser Arafat, a man like the Prime Minister Ahmed Qurayya, a man like the former Prime Minister Abu Mazen, a man by the name Mahmoud Abbas. So there will be a struggle, and it is an opening for Hamas. But, you know, let's face it, Hamas has had the run of the territories even when Arafat was on the scene. Arafat was an odd creature. He was both fireman and arsonist. He posed both ways. He swung both ways. And we will see that same play in the West Bank and Gaza in the days to come.
He has no clear successor. Fuad Ajami, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This Veterans Day, American troops are on the verge of gaining control of Fallujah, the Iraqi city that had been the last main stronghold for rebel insurgents. General Richard Myers is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and he joins us this morning. Good morning, General.
Good morning, Harry.
Can you give us a brief progress report on Fallujah and especially this area, this Jolan area?
Well, things are going, I think, as planned. It's been several days now. We've got about 70% of the city under control. The fighting, I think, by many has looked easy, but it's only easy because we've got very professional armed forces members conducting that operation, both Marines and United States Army and others. There have been hundreds and hundreds of insurgents who have been either killed or captured. We hope that in the next few days we'll be able to return Fallujah to the citizens there without the intimidation that the insurgents brought, and that as we go to elections in Iraq here in January, that the citizens of Fallujah can participate in that event as well.
This looks almost like one of those carnival games, though, over there in Iraq, where you hit the head of one and it goes down and something else pops up. Over the last 24 hours, you've got continued horrible explosions in Baghdad, Ramadi, Tikrit, Samarra. Mosul has turned into a no-man's land all of a sudden. Police there are working with the bad guys. How do you gain control of this entire country?
Well, just one correction there. Mosul is not a no-man's land. There are some issues, as you mentioned there, and they're being addressed by the Iraqi government. Well, the way you do it is the way we've been doing it. Coalition forces, on the security side, coalition forces help the Iraqi forces provide security for their own citizens. And as we build up their security forces, which is a major part of our effort, that's one piece. There's a political dimension, and that's what the interim Iraqi government is doing in terms of the political solution in Fallujah, in Mosul, in trying to put people in those positions, either in chief of police or as governors or mayors of those cities and towns, to bring back control. And there's also an economic piece, and you're going to see that work here in Fallujah fairly shortly, because all that's going to come together here in Fallujah. But there's some tough challenges ahead. As you mentioned, all the car bombs going off, these are the extremists killing their fellow Muslims, killing Iraqis. There are a lot more Iraqis that have been killed by these extremists than coalition forces over this fight.
General, on this Veterans Day, we can't let this opportunity to talk to you go without paying homage to these very brave men and women who are serving overseas.
You bet. This is the newest, greatest generation, if you will, that are serving overseas: Afghanistan, Djibouti, the Philippines, Iraq, many places around the world, all sworn to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, and willing to put their lives on the line for the freedom of this country and the values that we hold dear, just like their fathers did and their grandfathers and those before them. It's a great legacy. They're bringing hope to millions of people. I think what's happening in Afghanistan is a real tribute to the United States Armed Forces. I mean, the fact that almost 10 million people showed up and voted almost half of them women, and they seem to be on a path towards democracy.
Yes, sir.
Is a real tribute to the men and women in uniform.
General Myers, we thank you so much for your time today.
And thank you for the opportunity, Harry.
Do appreciate it.